welcome to our first show of this month in Leominster history. My name is Ron Girouard of the Leominster Historical Commission. I'd like to introduce my co-host, Mary Murata.
Hi, I'm Mary Murata. I'm a volunteer, a director, and a curator at the Leominster Historical Society. It's a pleasure to be here and to help add information to the monthly events. Ron, some people get confused between the difference between the Commission and the Historical Society. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Commission?
Sure, I sure can. So Mary, and for the people out there that are watching, this is the official document that we have to go by with the chairman of the Leominster Historical Commission the other day. Him and I went, Don Pimarini and I went over this word by word, and I typed it out nice and clear, and now I'm going to read what it says. So, and then Mary's going to explain what the difference between the two bodies are, okay? And in addition to reading this, as I'm reading it now, I'm going to put the paper in front of us so you can actually read it line by line while I'm reading it off, okay? So I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm just going to do the best I can, so just bear with me. Here goes. City of Leominster Historical Commission. By Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, requirements of the Historical Commission under the law. Conducting research on a place, historical, archaeological value, cooperating with state archaeologists, coordinating with other preservation organizations, keeping accurate records. The City of Leominster Historical Commission is limited to just 7 permanent members and a few associate members. All the permanent members are appointed by the Mayor of Leominster and approval by the vote of the City Council, the Leominster City Council. The Leominster Historical Commission was established in 1972 by the City of Leominster. The Leominster Historical Commission are subject to laws such as open meeting laws, conflict of interest laws, and other laws under the City of Leominster. So there you have it. Mary?
Thank you, Ron. That's very informative. The Leominster Historical Society is quite a bit different from the Commission when you start looking at it. The Historical Society at Leominster has been around since 1906. And so that makes the Historical Society about 113 years old, Ron.
Right.
Everyone who works at the Historical Society is a volunteer. Directors, volunteers, curators, everyone. The funds to run the Historical Society have always come from donations and from memberships. The neat thing about the Historical Society is that we have a museum, and we have exhibits on display, and we have event space.
Okay, great. And Mary, I'm going to explain to the viewing audience how this all started and why we are here today, and why we're going to be here every month, hopefully after this, if things go well. Okay, I'm going to say about 2 or 3 months back, a fellow member that, Mike Kerrigan, that he's a member of the Historical Commission like I am, and he got the idea of doing a history calendar on Facebook, our social media Facebook page, and putting up dates. For instance, this month in Leominster history happened 50 years ago today. And so we started putting this up on Facebook, and it became very, very popular. And then I got the idea of why don't we do something with slides and photographs and music, and then I started putting that up on Facebook as well, and that really became really, really popular. And so that brings us here today, and so I got another idea, why not bringing it up to another level? So for the first time in Leominster's history, the Leominster Historical Commission and the Leominster Historical Society will be working side by side with each other and presenting history in this type of format, bringing you each and every month an event calendar in a talk show type format and with artifacts that you might see on the table from time to time. And we'll explain what some of this stuff is towards the end of our broadcast. Mary?
Stay with us. It's fun to share what the Historical Society has in our storage and in our photograph collections. and help add to the stories about the different events that we're going to talk about in April.
Right, and again, what Mary and I talk about, we're going to be reading these index cards, and as we're talking about the index cards and what's on the information on the cards about the event calendar dates, I'm going to be putting in front of us the lettering as I'm talking and as Mary is talking, so that, in other words, you're going to just see the type, and then we're going to follow up with some photos and some video if you have video. Mary?
All right, then.
Are we ready to start?
I think we are.
Okay, I'm going to start the first one, and then we're going to feed off of each other. If Mary can add any more input to what I'm talking about, she will, and if I can add any more input, I will, kind of keeping it brief. And like I said, once again, while we're talking about this, I'm going to have photographs coming up in the front of us. We'll put them up long enough so that you can look at them and watch them. And if I have video, we'll put the video up as well. Okay? Are we ready, Mary?
Let's get started.
April 1st, 1880, Edward B. Tilton and Cook. Edward B. Tilton and George A. Cook opened Tilton and Cook. They were manufacturers of comb and jewelry. Mary, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I would love to. One of our photographs that you'll be seeing is George A. Cook's factory, where he made comb-making machinery. What is interesting about Edward B. Tilton was that he was a musician and he was the organist at the Orthodox Church. We're also showing a selection of the ornamental combs that we have on display at the Historical Society, and a catalog from Tilton and Cook who made those combs, and a picture of our comb maker's bench from the exhibit.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. April 1st, again, but this was in 1915. The artist Zygmunt A. Olbrus was born in Clinton, Massachusetts on this date. This Leominster resident is best remembered for his portraits of the Leominster mayors. Some are now on display at the municipal building. Now, Olbrus was a World War II veteran. He was for many years was a clay car modeler for GM in Detroit. He passed away in January of 1994, and his gravesite is at St. Cecilia Cemetery.
So the first mayor and current mayor, the first mayor was Henry Sittel, and he served the city from 1915 to 1925. And our current mayor of Leominster, Dean Mazzarella, he started serving, I believe, in 1993 to today, which is 25 years, or plus 25 years, and is the longest acting mayor of the Leominster, including the Commonwealth. And we find that very, that's quite a thing, Mary, for a mayor to be a mayor of a city for that long length of time. And we're very grateful to Dean Mazzarella for being our mayor of Leominster.
For his service.
Okay?
Exactly.
So that brings us to April 1st, 1892. Fitchburg Railroad purchased Leominster Railroad to become the F&L Railroad Company. The company would purchase Wayland Park a year later. Mary, anything else you want to add to that? You all set on that?
We have a picture of the trolley.
Okay.
Of the Fitchburg and Leominster Street Railway Company that was down, and we see it down there in downtown Leominster, right, in the photograph. And we have a wonderful picture of the trolley heading up to Wayland Park.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. And I believe you have
the next one.
You have that one.
April 2nd, 1804. Leominster voted that the town will not allow cattle, horses, or mules going at large during any part of the year ensuing.
What did that basically mean, Mary? The couple of photographs that we posted, I believe from the Edmund Davis collection now, he was another early photographer in Leominster, marvelous work, and some of his work is on our table that we'll be showing you a little later in the broadcast. The two photographs you're currently looking at, it was called the Animal Pound, and it was adjacent to where Carter Park is on the left and the Summer Street on the right. We have two different representations of these two photographs coming up. And I got some cattle and some horse photographs and a cow coming up on the timeline. Mary? Okay,
the Animal Pound was where they brought animals that were found wandering around the town. The owner had to go to the Animal Pound to retrieve the animal, and he had to pay a fine.
April 2nd, 1898, Bobo's Market opens on Water Street. Now, you'll find interesting that on Bobo's Market, it's over 100 years of being in business, and I actually have a photograph of the original Bobo's Market that was, those of you who know Bobo's Market will where the current location is, the photograph, you say, well, that photograph's not Bobo's, but in reality it is. The photograph that I'm putting up right now in front of us, it was to the right of Bobo's, and that was a little store, and they eventually bought that area. They might have owned that area right next to it, but they opened it up into a little bigger store, and that's what Bobo's Market is today. Mary?
It's amazing to have a local grocery store that's 121 years old. Okay, April 3rd, 1757. We're going back in time now. Gershom Houghton died on this day at the age of 66. In 1725, Gershom Houghton became the first settler of Leominster.
And Mary, I found that pretty significant in Leominster, that time frame. Can you imagine being the very first one and coming into your city or town and, wow, I'm here, I got the whole town to myself?
It's no wonder that the Historical Society erected a stone on his property, and that over time, that stone has had to get moved to number 6 schoolhouse to keep it safe.
Right, and as Mary and I progress with the calendar months, at some point this spring when the weather starts breaking, her and I will go down and document where it is and take some video and have a little voiceover on it, so we'll give you more of an idea what we're talking about. And Mary, I think that would be a good gesture.
I agree.
Okay, now it brings us to the next date, April 4th, 1838. Leominster annexes 2,100 acres of land of No Town. Mary, could you explain to the audience what that means?
No Town was a colonial village. It was mostly farmers. It was land that was granted to the veterans from the French and Indian War. Around that area, they built the reservoir, the No Town Reservoir. When they split up this land, No Town, they gave part to Leominster, part to Westminster, and part to Princeton.
Okay, thank you, Mary. April 5th, 1992, Reuben Clothing Store closes after decades of business in downtown Leominster. Lee Reuben, owner of the Reuben's of a clothing store. Now, I just want to emphasize a little bit on this because we had talked about her. Lee Reuben was a very generous lady. Scanning some of her documents and some of the photographs you're going to see coming up in front of us, she won numerous awards for her generosity in Leominster. She donated money to schools and charities, and many of you who might know Lee Reuben or knew Lee Reuben, she was known as a Tootsie Roll lady. And what I mean by that is when I was a kid, my mom used to bring us to the Reuben's clothing store, and if you were good, she gave you a Tootsie Roll, and that's how she became the Tootsie Roll lady. That's how everybody knew her by. So I thought that was a good story to put that in there, Mary.
It is. April 6th, 1929. Hundreds upon hundreds attend the Leominster Police Association dance at the Municipal Building, which is now called the City Hall.
And Mary, I couldn't find any photographs on that, and I was trying to, but we discussed this before, and this must have been a secret because I couldn't find any information on it. Could you?
It must have been a secret policeman's ball.
Right. April 6, 1967, groundbreaking ceremony for Solar Chemical.
I actually found out that Solar Chemical was founded by a man named Jack Zomfleur, and it became Novacor Chemicals Incorporated. Okay.
And the photograph that you're currently looking at, I just wanted to point out, I'm pretty sure it was a sketch drawing of what they thought it was going to come out when they eventually got it done. Right? I believe that was correct, right, Mary?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yep. April 7th, 1806. A new school ward opens on Birch Street. This is schoolhouse number 2 for grades 1 through 6. There were 16 numbered schoolhouses
Right.
in Leominster before they started naming them.
Okay.
And at the time this schoolhouse opened, Thomas Jefferson was the President of the United States.
Wow. Well, that's pretty interesting.
All
Mary,
right.
I believe you have the next one.
I do. April 8th, 1939. High praise was given to Leominster librarian Florence Wheeler by the Ohio State Historical Society for her research on Johnny Appleseed. As many people know, Florence Wheeler discovered the genealogy of Johnny Appleseed. He was the son of Elizabeth Simmons and Nathaniel Chapman of the town of Leominster. John Chapman, or Johnny Appleseed, was born in Leominster on September 26, 1774. We can thank Florence Wheeler for the fact that we can boast that Johnny Appleseed was born in Leominster.
So, Mary, I'm going to just add something to that. In my opinion, that was one of the most significant findings in Leominster history, recognizing Johnny Chapman being born in Leominster, John Chapman. For the simple reason was it really put Leominster on the map, in my opinion. You know, so that's all I kind of wanted to get out there.
It must have been stunning news at the time.
Yeah, breaking news. Okay, here we go. April 8th, 1968, Leominster City Council approves the name of Leominster Department of Public Works. Today it's kind of really known and briefed DPW. Mary,
would you like to hear their mission, Ron?
Sure.
I found out what their mission is.
I'm glad you asked me that.
Their mission is to maintain the city of Leominster's water, sewer, and street systems for the protection of public safety and improvement of their quality of life.
Wow.
April 9th, 1926. Competitive Boy Scout rallies happened between Leominster, Sterling, and Shirley. In that same year, the first Silver Buffalo Awards were presented.
Wow.
Those are nationwide awards given to Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts of America were founded in 1910, by the way.
Oh, wow. But Ron at the Scout Museum, the director of the Scout Museum at the Gallagher Building, he has a number of these artifacts that Mary's talking about, and they're opening Monday night around 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, I think, at the Gallagher Building up on the second floor, and it's free for the public to come down and visit. Mary?
I think I'd like to go and see it.
Okay, now it brings us to April 10th, 1929. Leominster Junior High School presents the opera Penny, Buns, and Roses.
And what I found out about that operetta was that it's a musical fantasy in one act and one scene. It was written in 1925 by Lisa Graham Wilson and Charles Repper.
Oh, great.
April 11th, 1931, there was a banquet of the Italian-American Naturalization Club.
Oh, there you go.
Naturalization was the effort to help Italians get American citizenship.
Oh, wow. So I just wanted to let Mary know, and you guys out there know, stay tuned every month, because I'm learning something today, and it's very interesting learning about our city's history and what all these events meant. Mary?
Every card is a new learning. April 12th, 1939, Luann Hume was born. She was known as the Birch Tree Lady. Wow. Luann Hume is a very interesting person. She's an artist who worked in pastels and watercolors. We have a picture of her working on her canvas. And she did landscapes, beautiful landscapes that include our iconic white birch tree.
Okay, and that brings us to April 14th, 1923. President Leominster Hospital opens for inspection.
And all I got to say is it must have passed inspection, because when we get to April 20th, they're going to open the hospital.
Okay. Okay. April 14th, 1975. Leominster City Council adopts the motto, "We can, we must, we will be free." Mary, do you want to add anything to that?
I do. You know, in 1766, Leominster was a village of 600, ruled by King George III of England. On March 3rd of that year, the Town Fathers wrote an address and sent it to the people of Boston in answer to what they felt were unjust laws of the British Parliament against the colonies. The closing words of that address were, "We must, we can, and we will be free." Then, about 200 years later, on April 14th, 1975, these 9 words became the official motto for the city of Leominster. Mrs. Holly von Eigen was a teacher. She and her children wrote a poem that was later set to music. Ron and I are going to read the poem.
We must, we can, and will be free. We must preserve our liberty. Our fathers died to make it so, and we must never let it go.
The stars and stripes must forever fly and wave ever bright against the sky. A really special freedom team, they symbolize the American dream.
This flag should fly day to day, not just only for today. Let freedom ring and be the way of life in the great USA. To keep it so, we all must care, and everyone must do its share. The precious right is ours, and we must, we can, and we will be free.
Thank you. Success.
Okay, that brings us to the next date, Mary.
April 14th, 2010. Joseph Augustus Goodhue Jr. died on this date. He was born in Leominster on June 16, 1914. Mr. Goodhue owned and operated Goodhue's Restaurant, which was located on Main Street.
Now, Mary, we have quite a few photographs coming up on the timeline. You want to explain a couple of those?
Well, we do. We have a few photographs of the restaurant.
Right.
And
I had a 1953 menu found that I had scanned a while back ago when I was doing the filing cabinets on the citizens. I came across the Goodhue file that we had on file, and I found the 1953 restaurant menu that he had used, and it was pretty interesting. I noticed some soup going for like 20 cents.
Soup for 20 cents.
Pretty wild. And it's some different other stuff like that. And we had the actual booth inside the restaurant and a nice window display sign that he had put up. So it was all pretty interesting. But this is coming up behind us, so you'll get an idea of what we're talking about, Mary. And I believe I'm the next one. April 15th, 1971, patriotic Leominster firefighter Fred L. Gleason dies. He was best known as Old Sarge. He carried the American flag in parades for 62 years. Can you imagine being a firefighter going on parades for 62 years, Mary? And wow, that must have been really great.
He was very patriotic.
So people who knew him would be proud of him, and so I just wanted to thank him and all the firefighters out there for their service and years of service, and city officials right down to the firemen, the police station, and our city officials that volunteer and do our city services. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to mine. Are you ready for this, Mary?
Well, I don't know.
April
is pretty
16th,
exciting.
1935. You ladies are going to love this. Mrs. Mary E. O'Toole assumes duties as a postmaster. Mary was the first woman to be appointed postmaster in Leominster. Now, Mary, I found that very significant, and I'm going to read a little bit more about her on the backside. Mary E. O'Toole, April 16th. Mary E. O'Toole, the first woman postmaster, appointed postmaster in Leominster, one of a few women postmasters of a first-class office in New England. I found that to be very significant as well as almost as important as Mrs. Wheeler, because Florence Wheeler and some of the other women in Leominster in our Leominster history. But can you imagine being the first one in Leominster to do something, the first settler, and now we have the first woman postmaster.
Exactly.
So I thought that was really cool when I saw that, and I'm pretty excited about that.
An early feminist.
Yes.
April 17th, 1716. This was when the 2nd Division of the New Grant authorized 30-acre lots. That was for settlement. 9 years later, the first settler, as we talked about, Gershom Houghton, arrived in Leominster. The new grant was the land that later became Leominster. One of the things that we have showing on on your TV right now is a map of Leominster. It's actually from 1840, but it's a very good representation of what Leominster would have looked like around this time.
Well, April 18th, 1889, Lionel B. Cavanaugh is born. He was a founder of Standard Tool. Mary, do you have anything else to add to that?
Oh, yes. Well, we have lots of artifacts that deal with the plastics industry. Lionel B. Cavanaugh had a company that made machinery for the plastics industry. You can read about him in a book called Mold of Fortune.
Oh.
April 19th, 1775. 99 Leominster militiamen, Minutemen, marched on Concord to engage the British as the alarm spreads.
And this photo that we have up there, it's actually a sketch drawing that we had, and it shows a disarray of men coming in on the battlefront line, and I believe that was all had to do with the Paul Revere March, where you used to come in the horse and say, to arms, Mary, is that correct?
That's correct, Ron. The ride of Paul Revere was actually the day before this, April 18th, 1775. Paul Revere rode from Boston to Concord to warn them that they needed to be ready to protect Concord against the British. It's pretty fascinating that the Leominster people were ready and waiting and able to leave the very next day.
So when we reference the 99 Leominster Minutemen basically meant they had to be ready in a minute. So no matter what happened, you had to stop what you're doing, grab your arms and your ammunition, get on your horse and try wherever they needed to get going because they needed you. That's how bad they needed you.
Exactly.
That's basically what that meant. Thank you, Mary. That brings us to April 20th, 1900. 30 acres is purchased from the Hoole family that would eventually become the St. Cecilia Cemetery. Did you want to add anything to that, Mary? You all set on that? Or?
I love our aerial picture of St. Cecilia Cemetery. It's really beautiful.
Okay, thanks, Mary.
April 20th, 1923, the Leominster Hospital transferred from Blossom Street to North Main Street. That was the time that the transfer was completed. You'll note that they passed the inspection a week earlier, so they were able to do this. The small building on Blossom Street that was the hospital was quite overwhelmed 5 years earlier by the by the flu epidemic in 1918.
April 21st, 1930. Italian mission opens up at St. Leo's Church. Mary, did you happen to find anything on this? Because I couldn't find anything other than the photograph that we got up.
I did. We already talked a little bit about Italian naturalization, which was something that in our picture and in our event happens a year later.
Okay.
The Italians at St. Leo's Church were very concerned about the looming threat of communism over their relatives and their friends who were still living in Italy.
Right.
So the Italian mission was an attempt for them to get together and to help people who were in Italy who wanted to stay Catholic to come to America.
Oh, wow.
April 22nd, 1970. Mayor Ralph Crossman proclaims Earth Day in Leominster.
Now we go on to April 23rd, 1910. New Leominster Library on West Street opens for inspections. The building was constructed on donations from Andrew Carnegie of a gift of $27,500. Mary?
Well, Andrew Carnegie was an industrialist, a millionaire, and a philanthropist. He gave this gift to the town on the condition that the town would spend 10% of that, $2,750 per year, to maintain the library after his donation. He passed away in Lenox, Massachusetts. April 24th, 1932, William S. Reed passed away. He was the founder of the W.S. Reed Toy Company. We have lots of wonderful pictures of W.S. Reed toys.
The photograph that I have on the timeline is the photograph that came out of the Percy Johnson collection. And what those photographs were cover designs that they used to put on the boxes of the toys. And we have some other photographs coming up behind it. And you're going to find those photographs, and the information on the photographs are really pretty interesting. And in addition to all this, anytime if you're watching this program on the computer, you can always pause it if you need to read what we got up on the timeline. And we'll slow it down enough so it'll give you plenty of time to read the text going across. Mary?
The W.S. Reed Toy Company became famous for making hobby horses.
Yes.
Or rocking horses.
Okay. And also on the timeline as well, one of the photographs is the house where W.S. Reed was, and he's on the front porch. And so we get some pretty interesting photos like that on the timeline.
Yes.
April 25th, 1946, Leominster High School presents Taming of the Shrew. Did you want to add anything else to that, Mary?
This was a William Shakespeare play. I hope they did well.
Okay.
April 26, 1986, there was a 2-alarm fire on Water Street in building number 5.
Okay. Now, I couldn't find any photographs on that particular building fire, but did you find any more information on it, Mary?
I actually got really lucky.
Okay.
I Googled this, and I found out that the building 5 was where there is now the Whitney Carriage Apartments.
Okay.
That was the location of building 5.
Okay. And
April 27th, 1937. Work begins in tearing down the old Abbey on Lindell Ave.
now we have a couple of photographs coming up of the old Abbey. It was known as the Underground Railroad, I believe, right, Mary?
It was a stop on the Underground Railroad.
And the two photographs we have coming up are actually photographs of the old Abbey before it tore it down. They're just two different angle photographs, but they're really pretty neat. Thank you, Mary. April 27th, 1983, Hollywood invades Leominster. I Am the Cheese premiering at the Sac Cinema. Robert Cormier, a Leominster native, born January 17, 1925, died November 2nd, 2000. Robert was a best-selling author of 18 books,
18.
a recipient of numerous awards and honors. Cormier was an award-winning journalist, a reporter, columnist, editor for more than 30 years. Cormier's novels remain the greatest achievements, and many have attained the status of classics. Which brings us to I Am the Cheese, a film based on a Robert Cormier novel. Mary, did you want to add anything to that before we go on to the next one?
What an exciting time that must have been in Leominster.
Some of the photographs I have coming up on the timeline is one of him is something award from the mayor of Leominster at the time. That was Mayor Richard Girouard, and for most people who might not notice, yes, he is related to me. He was my Uncle Richie on my father's side. Thank you, Mary. April 28th. 1878, Percy Everett Johnson was born. Percy, a Leominster native. Percy died in 1966. Percy was a self-employed photographer and a maker of picture frames. Percy began his work in photography in 1892 and chose to always work with glass negatives. Many of our past photographs can be traced to Mr. Percy Johnson's work. And Percy began picture framing July 11th, 1909. He actually had a shop that was a picture frame in Leominster that he produced picture frames. Now, we just happen to have a glass negative of one of Percy Johnson's work, and I'm going to show you what it kind of looks like. So this is a glass, what they call the glass slide negative. It's small glass. It's got a reflective image on the glass itself. I scanned this the other day when I was at the Gallagher building, and what that was is, I'm going to put the photograph up in front of us, showing you what the photograph is on. What was this image? And what that was is, it was called the Red Bridge. It was on the bottom of the hill of Mechanic Street and Nashua Street, and it was referenced as the Red Bridge at the time because the bread was made of red wood. And years later, it eventually came the Soteli Bridge, which is the mayor of Leominster, the rededication to the first mayor of Leominster. And to give you guys even more of an idea what that is, I believe Lindo Lab is to the right of it just before you go up that bridge. And if you go up a little further to the left, Groves Farm is on the left-hand side, just up by that way. So that gives you the best representation where that bridge was located. Mary?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
What a great artifact.
Thank you.
April 28th, 1901, St. Leo's Church is dedicated.
Yeah, and I couldn't find too much on that, but if we come across anything as we progress further into the months, we'll share it with the public. But we do have a nice sketch drawing of the photograph.
St. Leo's website has a very nice history of the building itself. Apparently, St. Leo's was first established in 1872, but they had a church that they purchased from the Methodists on 91 Main Street. So they were very excited in 1901 when they were able to start their own church, build their own church at 128 Main Street.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Mary.
April 28, 1959, Leominster City Council grants appropriation of finances to purchase the Bungrazi property. This will be the future site of the current Leominster Police Station.
And Mary, I just wanted to add to that, the photograph that you're seeing is a picture of the old police station that was located on West Street. And that young police officer in that photograph was my grandfather, Hebert. His first name was George Hebert. He served the Leominster Police Department as a police officer for 30 years. And he eventually retired out as a lieutenant. And then they eventually moved the location to the police station opposite of the Gallagher building on that street. I believe that's Church Street?
Church Street.
Church Street, yes. Thank you, Mary.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, so that brings us to April 29th. April 29th, 1987, James Natchway, photojournalist, wins the Capitol Award for the third time. Not only did he win the award 3 times, at the time this card was, the date we found on this historic date, he won it 5 times and a numerous amount of other awards as well. Okay, and that brings us to the last and final one for the month.
April 30th, 1924. S. Wesley Haynes purchases Pigeon Swamp Road. The purchase helps to create the Fitchburg-Leominster Airport. We have a wonderful picture of S. Wesley Haynes. He was a World War I flying ace. When he returned from Europe, he flew stunts over Leominster, amazing people. And he was also a very good artist.
Mary, before we close, is there anything else you'd like to add to our show before we make our final leaving notes?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, Ron.
Thank you, Mary.
And I think our viewers might be glad too, because they've probably been looking at the artifacts that are on the front of our table here and wondering what it is that we have in front of us and why.
Okay, that's very, and when Mary and I explain what they are, I promise it won't be a secret no more. Okay, go ahead, Mary.
These are called stereoscopes. They were very, very popular for people who had to entertain themselves in the Victorian days.
Right.
It was a way to take pictures and see three-dimensional.
Right.
Get a three-dimensional image from the picture. As you can see, it has 2 eye holes. And the stereo view, which is the photograph, it's actually 2 photographs taken from slightly different angles.
And from our research, I believe these are kind of like 3D.
Because they're taken from 2 different angles, when you view them when you view the 2 pictures through the 2 lenses, it pops out. It makes it look like it's 3D.
Okay.
Because you're seeing it with the perspective.
Okay.
So let's try this out. Let's see what we have here. Do you have anything interesting?
I have, it looks like one of the reservoirs in Leominster, possibly No Town.
Ooh. Edmund G. Davis, who was one of our great photographers of Leominster, was very fond of making these stereo views.
And what's Mary?
I think I have the building on the top of Mount Washington here. That was a popular image.
Right. And these would have been one of your earliest forms of entertainment. There was other forms of entertainment as well, but this would be kind of like equivalent of today of the from the popular 50s and 60s viewfinders that we used to use when we were kids growing up.
Exactly.
Many of us baby boomers will know what I'm talking about. In addition to all these wonderful slides, they can be found at the Leominster Historical Society, Mary, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Come to the Historical Society and see our artifacts and look at our 3D photos.
When are they open, Mary?
We're open on Tuesday mornings from 9 to 12 and Saturday mornings from 9 to 12, or you can call us and make an appointment.
And here at the Leominster Historical Commission, we're open 9 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock at noon, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And once again, if you need to come in another day or another time, please feel free to call us, and we'd be glad to accommodate you. Mary, another reason why we have these out is because be watching for next month and future months. Mary and I are going to have an interesting artifact out here on the table, and we'll explain what it's about. The reason why we have these out here today is because at the studio they're planning on doing something really, really special, Mary, with these slides that Edmund Davis took. So I want you guys to be watching for that. And once again, I'm Ron Girouard from the Leominster Historical Commission, and I'd like to thank my co-host, Mary Murata from the Leominster Historical Society, for helping me out with this show, helping us out producing this show here at the studio. Is there anything else you want to add, Mary, before we close?
Have a great month, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Leominster TV, for producing the show. I want to thank everybody in the back room for helping us out with this. Bye.
Talk about your ragtime band. Talk about your leader man. There's only one that I'll take my hat off to, and he's a colored man who leads the band in Chattanooga. Ragtime Rufus is his name.